Hey there, and welcome to the ADU Adventures, Building in Your Backyard. I'm James Parks, your host, and if you've been following along, you already know what an ADU is, the different types, and why they're becoming a go-to solution for so many homeowners. But let's be real, knowing what an ADU is and actually building one are two completely different things. I hear it all the time, James, I'd love to build an ADU, but where the heck do I even start? And trust me, I get it. The process can be overwhelming. It's like standing at the bottom of a mountain looking up thinking, how am I ever going to climb that thing? Well, that's exactly what we're here to tackle today. Think of me as your ADU trail guide. I'm going to walk you through the entire journey, from that first spark of an idea all the way to the moment where you step inside your brand new ADU. We'll cover the first steps, what you should do before anything else, the biggest roadblocks homeowners face and how to avoid them, the key milestones from planning to permitting to construction, and finally, a real homeowner story, because there's nothing better than learning from someone who's been through it. So if you're dreaming about an ADU but feel stuck on where to begin, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Before we talk about floor plans and blueprints and permits and construction sites, let's hit pause for a second, because before you get into any of that, you need to answer the big question. Why do you want to build an ADU? Not just because it's nice to have extra space, but why really are you looking to build an ADU? Who's going to live in it? Are you building for an aging parent, a grown child moving back home? Maybe you want to rent it out, or maybe you want to downsize into it. Do you need to adapt over time? Are you looking for your lifestyle to change and you're going to need that extra space to tackle what challenges you face in the future? The advice I always give people is to be really clear about why you're building the ADU in the first place, because it impacts every single decision down the road. For example, if you're building for aging parents, you'll want wider doorways, no steps, grab bars in the bathroom, maybe an induction stove, even if you don't need them right now. If it's for straight rental income, you might focus on maximizing the privacy of the unit and keeping all of the elements low maintenance. Taking this time up front to really think about what your goals are will directly impact what your project will become and can save you a lot of time, money, and stress later. So, without further ado, let's talk about how you get started. If you're building an ADU, it's time to look at where you're going to put it, because not every ADU is backyard ready. There are a few things that you need to check. How much space do you actually have? You'll need room for the ADU and whatever outdoor space you want to keep. Not to mention, you want to understand your own city and neighborhood's zoning laws. Not all lots are automatically ADU friendly, but it doesn't mean an ADU can't be built there. You've also got to think about, well, where are my utilities going to go? Every ADU needs water, sewer, electrical. Can your property handle all that? Can the electrical load handle all that? Now, let's be real for a moment. What you think is possible and what's actually possible can be two very different things. I learned this firsthand when I was working on my own ADU project. I thought I could just pick a spot in the backyard and plant the ADU where it looked nice. Nope. Turns out I had very specific setback restrictions that limited where the ADU could actually be built on the property. And that's fine, but it was important for me to learn that. That's why a property assessment can be so important. At Acton ADU, for example, we always start with the first step where we actually do a feasibility study or a project validation. We study the property, try to understand all of the elements that can impact the build so that when presenting an ADU package to a customer, we're showing them something that's real, not something that's imaginary. We know where the ADU will fit legally, and we try to meet the customer's needs as best as possible. This is really critical because without this research up front done properly, you could potentially create disasters for yourself later, or find out that your plan set is completely unpermittable, or end up languishing in the planning and building department of your city for months or even years. But when the feasibility stage is done, now it's all about design, which is often the fun part for most folks. And when I say fun, I really mean it. This is the part where your vision starts to come into reality. It's where you stop thinking about permits and property lines and start imagining what it's actually going to be like to live in the space. Picture it. You wake up, you walk outside to your backyard, and instead of seeing this empty space, you see a beautifully, thoughtfully designed ADU that fits seamlessly into your home and in your life. But here's the thing. Designing an ADU isn't just about making something look nice. It's about making a space that works for you, for your family, for whoever is going to be living there. Let me tell you about a couple I worked with. We'll call them Mike and Sarah. They were building an ADU for Sarah's mom, who was getting older but still wanted to keep her independence. Familiar story. At first, they were just thinking, okay, we need a small little house with a bedroom and a bathroom. Pretty basic. But as we talked through the design, they realized they had a lot to think about, more than just square footage. For example, Sarah's mom used a walker. So suddenly, things like wider doorways, a step-free entrance, and grab bars in the bathroom, and a no-threshold shower became crucial elements of the design. They also thought, how would the space evolve? Because while she was independent now, they wanted to make sure that she could stay comfortably in the ADU for years to come, as her health may decline. That meant making smart choices, like open concept layouts to make moving around easier, a shower with a built-in bench, and a kitchen designed so everything was within reach. And you know what? When it was done, Sarah's mom loved it. She had her own cozy, accessible home, and they had peace of mind knowing she was safe, comfortable, and just a few steps away. Now, not everyone is building an ADU for a parent. Some people want to generate income for a rental unit, or they're looking to use it for guests long-term. Others need a home office or a future space for their kids. And that's why flexibility is key. Here's what I tell people, the way you use it 10 years from now. Maybe right now it's a rental property, but later it becomes a home for a family member. Maybe today it's a guest house, but a few years down the line, it's where you work from home. So when you're designing an ADU or picking a design for an ADU, ask yourself the following questions. Will this space work for me 5, 10, even 20 years from now? And does it give me enough flexibility to adapt if my needs? Thinking about building an ADU? Well, maybe try starting here. When I first explored building an ADU, I had lots of questions. Can I even build one? What am I going to do about permits? And who can I trust to get it done? That's where Acton ADU made all the difference. For decades, we've been helping homeowners design and build projects and high-quality ADUs long before they were a trend. We know the process, from smart design to navigating permits without a hassle. More than builders, we help families plan for the future, and our 5-star reviews speak for themselves. If you're serious about an ADU, start with the right team. Get a free consultation from Acton ADU. We'll show you what's possible. Just visit actonadu.com/podcast or call 408-369-1103 and let us know how you heard about us. You won't regret it. Suddenly change. Because a well-designed ADU isn't just a building, it's a home, and homes always evolve. So having talked about design, now we get into the dirty bit. Construction. The moment of truth. This is the part where things get real. The plans are done, the permits are approved, and suddenly, one morning, a crew shows up and your backyard starts to look a little, well, chaotic. I'll be honest, construction can be a roller coaster. There's the excitement of seeing the foundation go in, the walls going up, the roof taking shape. But then there are also surprises, because let's be real, every construction project has them. Let me tell you about my own ADU project. The first few weeks, smooth sailing. The crew was moving fast, the framing went up, and I was already picturing the finished space. But then, boom, a delay. Turns out a shipment of materials got held up, and suddenly we were 2 weeks behind schedule. And you know what? It was frustrating. No one likes delays, but that's part of the process. Only just a few years ago, there was a huge windstorm that took place in the Bay Area, and that really messed things up for a lot of job sites. Projects got righted, but, that's an act of God. What's important to remember, though, is that these things happen, and the best way to handle them is to be patient, stay flexible, and communicate with your builder. Because any professional builder, they build in contingencies for these types of things so that they can keep the projects running and everybody happy. One homeowner we worked with, Lisa, had her construction timeline pushed back a couple of weeks due to a major rainstorm. She was stressed at first, who wouldn't be? But because Acton was able to stay in contact with her and maintain the expectations for how the schedule would be adjusted, she didn't panic. Acton made sure the inspections were adjusted, lined up in advance, so the moment the weather cleared, work could pick up again. And sure enough, her ADU was finished on time. So if you're in a construction phase right now, here's my best advice. Expect some bumps along the way. It's not 100% hiccup free. Stay in touch with your builder, ask questions, get updates, and make sure that you're on the same page. Last of all, be patient. Construction may take a few months, but once it's done, you'll have a beautiful new space that will be totally worth it. There's nothing quite like a traditional build in terms of quality. Because let me tell you, the day your ADU is finally finished, when you step inside for that first time, and when you see the sunlight coming through those windows and you know that that space is yours, that feeling, it's unbeatable. All right, I'm going to diverge and wrap this up with a really short story because I know we've covered a lot today, and it's one thing to talk about the process, but it's another thing to hear about what the experience was for someone else. So I'll introduce you to a family we worked with. We'll call them the Rivera family. The Riveras, Maria and Luis, had been thinking about building an ADU for years. Maria's father, Hector, was getting older, and while he was still independent, they knew that at some point he'd need to get closer to family. They didn't want to wait until it became an emergency, so they started exploring their options early. At first, they weren't even sure if an ADU was possible on their lot. They considered remodeling, they considered a home addition. They had a nice-sized backyard, but it had a slight slope, and they were worried about the feasibility and the cost. When they reached out to us, we did a full site assessment. Good news, their property was eligible for an ADU. It could be attached, but because of the slope, it would have to require some extra foundational work. Now, this is where a lot of people might panic. Extra work usually means extra cost, right? But here's the thing. Because they planned ahead, they were able to factor that into their budget and their financing plan from the start. No surprises, no last-minute stresses, and we were able to put together some plans that worked for them. The design phase was actually a pretty emotional process for them. They worked closely with our team to make sure that the space would feel like a home for Hector, not just a unit in a backyard. So they chose one of our models from our library that had big windows for natural light, and we added a small covered patio so they could sit outside in the mornings with his coffee. And the open floor plan was excellent for him because it not only opened up the space, but it was really easy to get around. Here's my favorite part. They built a small connecting pathway from the ADU to the main house, so there would be this direct connection between the two households. Fast forward a few months, construction was complete. Hector moved in, and the moment he walked in for the first time, you could see this relief on his face. He had his own space, but he wasn't alone. He could still have dinner with the family every night, still watch the grandkids play in the yard, but at the end of the day, he could go home, into his own front door, into his own kitchen, and his own home to unwind. Maria shared a little bit later that she never realized how much peace of mind that it would give her. She wasn't really worried anymore. She was constantly checking in, making sure that he was okay, but she was just finding him safe, comfortable, and happy. And that's the power of an ADU. It's not just a structure, it's a solution. One that gives families that flexibility that's super important, but also just improves family life. So there you have it. The ADU journey from vision to reality. We covered how to define your project goals, the project assessment period, design and zoning and permits, and all of those decisions associated with getting your plans together, and then what the actual construction of a traditional build will look like for you. If there's one thing that I want you guys to take away from this episode is that building an ADU is absolutely doable. It's a process. And yes, there are many steps, but those steps are pretty well defined by professional companies. And trust me, when you step into that fully finished ADU for the first time, when you see all that space become something real, whether it's for family or whatever, you'll know it was worth it. Now, next episode, we're going to zoom in on zoning laws and the permitting process. I know, legal stuff doesn't always sound exciting, but here's the thing. Understanding the rules and knowing how to operate in those rules are key to successful ADU projects. We'll break it down in a way that's simple, straightforward, and dare I say, actually interesting. And hey, if today's episode got you thinking maybe it's time I look into this ADU thing for real, Acton is here to help. Visit actonadu.com/podcast to schedule a free consultation. There's no pressure, just information, so you can figure out what's possible for your home. And as always, thank you for hanging out with me today. I'm James Parks, and this has been ADU Adventures. Until next time, happy building.